This is Honest Neighbour, a podcast about real estate, Oxford County, and everything in between.
Why don't you welcome us this time, Neil?
Because that's a large responsibility. Welcome to the Honest Neighbor. This is a podcast about 15-minute cities and things we don't like in real estate, to tell you the truth. And anything else we want to talk about. So that's what's going down today.
Well, I think Ben wants to talk about
right. Okay,
Ben wants to
so-
talk about something.
I think we'd kind of called this, what did you call it? Like real estate etiquette? Agent etiquette?
Agent etiquette, real estate etiquette.
So we do a lot of dealing with other people, which, for better or worse, that's kind of part of the job.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to tell a little story about something that didn't go very well for us. And it starts when I was 15 years old. No, seriously, it does. Probably a little younger than that yet. So I used to work at the golf course, and my job was like washing clubs and getting clubs out for people, putting them away when they're done. And there was a really nice guy there, a lot of them actually, and some not so nice people, but a lot of nice people. And I kind of liked this guy, and we got along. We played golf a few times over the years together just by chance. Anyway, fast forward to Christmas of this year, and I'm at my son's piano recital, like a little Christmas music concert thing. And he sits, behind me. And I haven't seen this guy in a couple of years. He still plays, but we don't play at the same time. Anyway, I don't see him. And he's like, hey, just so you know, my son's getting ready to, think about buying a house. And I'm going to give him your card. Do you have one on you? And I gave him one. And, sure enough, within a month or two, he called. And not even a month or two, because it's only February, but... Anyway, he called, and we went through our get-to-know-you situation where we sat down and chatted, talked about the process of buying a house, went through some question and answer stuff, kind of got them primed up, got them working on some homework, like pre-approvals, all that stuff. And then finally the day came where we're actually going to go and see houses. And they're picky. They know what they want. So they kind of narrow it down on their own. And we had one in mind that we were going to go see. And it was a good price. I could see from the listing, it looked like a good price. And then we went in the house, and I'm like, I don't know how to tell you this, but this house is aggressively priced, and it's probably going to sell really fast. And it's really hard when you have buyers, and the first house they see is the perfect house.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because A, they don't believe you when you tell them. And then when you say it's underpriced, they also don't believe you because you just sound like a salesperson.
Yeah.
Like you're trying to make a deal that day.
100%.
Right? Okay, I like deals. But the reality is, I know when I see a good house that's priced well and ready to go. So anyway, they had a few questions about the house, and I was going to ask the agent to help me answer some of those questions. Utility costs and whatnot, okay? But by the time I even got back to the car after the showing was done, there was a message on my phone that says, oh, by the way, the sellers have countered an offer on this house. So there was already a negotiation happening while we were even in the house, which, common courtesy would be to notify any agents that have shown or are about to show the property that something is in play. So you can at
had
least
an obligation under.
Well, you would think so, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second. But and then that was 20 after 2, and then by 2:40 the offer was accepted. So we had these are first time buyers. You can't just slam an offer in front of them and hope that they'll understand everything on it, and you just submit it.
Yeah.
Yes, physically it takes 10 minutes to make an offer, but going through an offer with a first time buyer, it's an hour. At least an hour.
Yeah.
By the time you answer all the questions and go through everything, it's at least an hour. Anyway, so they were really upset, and I was really upset because I felt that it would have been nice if we had known. It would have been nice if we were informed about that. Because I don't think that offer came in at 1:30. I think that offer came in probably the night before, and nobody said a word to us about it, which is no good. But you said, what did you say? Did you have an obligation?
I wondered if there was an obligation under the Real Estate Code of Ethics.
I think
REBA.
I think the obligation is if you are holding offers and you receive an offer that is different from the time that you're holding offers, you are obligated to let everybody know that you're changing the time that you're looking at offers. However, the question is, who is working for who? That agent who represented the sellers is supposed to represent the sellers, which means get them the best deal possible.
Right.
And by not informing other buyers and their agents that an offer was in play, thereby increasing the odds of competitive situation, they are not working in the best interest of their clients.
They're doing a disservice to their clients.
I 100% agree with you. And then when the sale price came up, I was like, holy shit, that's 40 grand, maybe 50 under what I thought they could have got for that house.
Yeah.
So you just kind of go you got to be really careful who you hire, I guess, because that I mean, I'm not saying anything about the individual, but it
was just an unfortunate situation.
It was, but
wasn't
this
a
is
good-
not an isolated situation either.
Oh, no.
Oh no,
This has happened to all of us, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Neil, do you have a
And
good story?
Well, no, it's very rampant in commercial, right? Because there's even more of a disconnect between the person selling the property and the real estate agent. You live in your house every day. When you own a building that might be a city away or 2 city aways, you have no idea what's going on with it. And so you're very much at the, it's dependent on your agent. Your agent is a conduit to the information for
commercial deals like those agents. Now, pardon me if I'm offending anybody in the commercial world. I don't work in that area at the moment, but they really do put up walls to try and sell it themselves. Do they not? Is that true? Or
okay? So and I have to. I don't know 100% know exactly, but I remember. While ITSO was forming, obviously we had to have commercial input on it because they are representatives. But I do believe there were some issues with how information was related because in a commercial, and this is across North America, traditionally the commercial brokerages they have their own client base, so not all the properties ever hit MLS.
Yeah.
There's a lot of exclusive listings and stuff like that.
Like farms.
And they control that information. So that information is, the more information you have access to, knowledge is power,
Right.
absolutely. And so if the brokerages sell a lot of exclusive listings, then people don't have comparables, they don't have whatever, but then they also don't know when stuff is available.
Right.
But because of the detachment from the sellers, as I said, to their agent, they really sometimes have no idea what's going on.
Right.
Like I had some people tell me, they told me they were going to put a lockbox on the property, and I was like, it's a vacant building, okay? So they're like, oh, we'll put the lockbox on it. And they're like, oh, we forgot the lockbox, didn't have it with us, but my partner's there today. And I'm like, well, I've got 45 minutes. I don't think my client can get here from the GTA in the next 45 minutes. I could lend you a lockbox, I guess. But it becomes sometimes like in a situation like that, it becomes so ridiculous. Like why? What does it matter? There's nobody in the building. You know what I mean? Just put your own lockbox on.
Oh, so they didn't have a lockbox and you couldn't show it.
Right, but his partner could show it that day.
Convenience.
Yeah.
Right.
And he had the key, but he just didn't have a lockbox to put on the door, so I could get in.
so when my situation was happening, you predicted that it would have been an in-house transaction, but it actually wasn't. So
Really?
I will
It's the
give
same
them the
brokerage.
benefit of the.
Wasn't it? I think it was the same brokerage.
Oh, I actually thought it wasn't.
I feel like I looked at it as
Okay,
well.
okay, maybe I'm.
I thought
I
it was
mean-
as soon as you said. I said I wondered if it would be in the house. Yeah.
I assumed it was the same agent with their own buyers,
Yeah.
but that was not the case.
Yeah, so it's really hard. We talked about double ending a little bit in an earlier episode, but this is why I hate it because then people they already suspect that you're going to do something.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I started, and I was flabbergasted that the agent thought it was a thing. But I was in a multiple offer on a building with another brokerage. They had the listing, and I was in competition with an agent from their brokerage, and I ended up winning. They said, and the agent said that to me, and I was baffled. They go, you know what, you won, they're going to work with your offer, but you got to give my guy in my house a chance to match your offer.
What?
And I was like, what?
Did they not realize how illegal that was?
This is
oh
like,
my
was
gosh.
it like 2006 or 2007? And I was like, oh my goodness, what's going on here?
That's crazy.
I remember when I first started, it was one of the first offers I'd ever written, and I was all of a sudden in competition. So I had the buyers, and there was a little property, like a rural property, that was priced hot. At the time, I didn't really know what the heck I was doing.
Yeah.
But I went into this offer presentation, and the listing agent actually had us all sit at the table and present our offers
I've seen
together.
that. I've seen that. Oh, sorry.
Interesting. Oh,
Maybe this was
Neil's
a
trying
mistake.
to,
I'm sorry, that's bad.
To have
Take out the
Neil
sound
sit
panel.
there.
Very animated.
I would go with fidgety.
I had a set of clients in about, I'm going to say probably around 2017, 18, kind of when multiple offers were first starting to happen. And we were looking at houses in kind of the $350,000 to $500,000 price range, which was a lot at that time. Like they were maybe it's a little bit earlier then. Anyways, but we had a situation where multiple houses that we looked at were listed by the same person, and every house we were in competition for, that agent's own offer was always the winning offer.
Oh,
so it
yeah.
got to the point where my client said, we refuse to look at any houses listed by that person because we are not supporting that. We can't prove, but we know something shady is going on there.
If it looks like a duck.
Yeah. And, you know, it was so unfortunate, not just, I mean, obviously for my clients because they wanted these houses, but it was unfortunate for the entire industry because that is their first impression to the real estate industry was that there was multiple agents out there doing multiple shady things, but especially in multiple offer situations. And they still talk about that.
And that's how I felt on behalf of my buyers,
Yep.
that the first house that they saw was like a terrible, I mean, it's not that bad of a situation, but it's not a great situation.
No.
And they just have a bad taste in their mouth about everything as a result of that.
Of course they do.
So now I have to try and like re-earn their trust in the industry to, you know, keep them moving
Yeah.
forward.
Absolutely.
So that wasn't fun.
No, but you're right, though. They did. It does turn. It feels weird because you're almost like an ambassador when you're first meeting them, right? You're there, you know, if it's not a relationship you've had before. And so you're right. When you do say things like this is a good deal, there's right off the hop, there's an element of mistrust
Yep.
that just comes with it because you're like, oh, you're a car salesman or you're
Yeah.
trying to do
Trying to make
this.
a
You're
deal
going to
right.
give me
Yeah.
a lemon or whatever.
Yeah.
When the market was super busy, I rarely showed my own properties.
Yeah.
If I could avoid showing my own properties, I would. And I
Yeah.
would tell sellers up front, we are going to have multiple offers on this. I will not be showing it personally. I will
Okay.
have, you know, this person or this person from my brokerage show it. And this is why.
Yeah.
Because I do not want to be bringing my own offer in a multiple offer
Yeah,
situation.
it's hard. Yeah.
Or, you know, if I showed it, I would tell people flat out, I will show it to you, and then you're going to be, if you want to offer, it's going to be taken over by someone else from my brokerage
That's a
at that
good
point
call.
because I'm not writing an offer on my own listing in a multiple offer situation. There, you can't. I don't want to say you can't. It is highly unlikely you can do your job effectively and with full ethics and integrity in that situation because you know too much.
I noticed that there are some investors who will seek out the listing agent.
Oh,
regardless.
there's
Yeah.
residential
Yep.
buyers too.
Yep.
Yeah, and just because they automatically will assume that they are going to
Yeah.
get an inside leg on something.
In residential, somebody somewhere taught buyers that if they go right to the listing agent, they can negotiate the commission,
Right.
Yes.
which isn't actually a fact,
Yeah.
but it does put a listing agent in the position where maybe they can do something about the commission, but there's no guarantee of that.
Yeah.
I don't know why a buyer thinks they have the authority over a contract that the seller signed with an agent anyway.
I was just
but,
going to say, I don't think buyers understand that
don't.
commission is part of the listing contract
Yep.
between the listing brokerage and the sellers, and that we can't talk about that to buyers.
Oh.
So it's just not something that we're supposed to talk about with them. I mean, in a slower market, you know, where you may have one offer on a property, I can see a situation where there might be room for some negotiation there, certainly, but you're not supposed to have that conversation with the buyers. It's supposed to be with the sellers. So
It's the assumption that I've seen where like, oh, if I go
Yeah.
right with you, then we'll get a better deal.
Yeah.
Well, why will you get a better deal, Mr. Buyer? Well, because the commission will be less. Well, no, it won't.
Yeah.
Why would it be less?
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, I'm taking on double the liability. It's a lot more work. It's a careful process.
Yeah.
You know.
No, there's an assumption that goes with it.
So going back to something you said, well, I think I said it and then you repeated it about feeling like a salesperson when you first meet a client and all of a sudden you see an opportunity for them and you're trying to explain to them that it's an opportunity. This is why my preferred method of attack with buyers is to always try and build a ton of rapport with them before we ever set foot in a house. Like I usually like to have, it starts with a phone call or an email or however they reach out, text message, whatever it is. But I almost always try and have a conference, like a video chat, half hour, 45 minutes, or in the office is best. It's just people are resistant to that. I think we've got retrained with Zoom, or with the pandemic using Zoom or FaceTime or whatever to kind of get connected with people. But I love that. It always goes better when I bring people into the office and we just talk for like an hour. And my questions are things like, hey, what do you guys do when you're not buying houses?
Yeah.
Like, what do you do for fun?
Yeah.
And then, of course, okay, are you pre-approved? And what do you know about the process and all those other things that you're supposed to ask? But like feathered in there is, hey, so like, is your family from here, or where do you work? And like finding out about them so that when you go to actually deliver them information that is relevant to their purchase, like, yeah, this is a good deal, you should make an offer today. You've built up some trust, like a little bit of camaraderie and trust with those people. So
That's a good idea.
I do feel that I work best when I'm aligned with my clients. And that's a great way to do it, is to just like sit down and actually hang out for a bit.
I like the fact that I don't have to take clients now that if I'm not aligned with them at all, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I honestly think that having that relationship is important to me. If I don't have a relationship, and I actually say that to people when I discuss things about buyer representation, and I think early on people thought I was being cocky when I said it to them, but I think it was being 100% true. I say, this buyer representation, I'm not going to have you sign it right away. I said, we're not going to look at houses right away, but we're going to have conversations about stuff, and because realistically, you need to understand if I'm the right salesperson for you, and I need to understand if you're the right client for me, because if we don't click, then it's not going to work. Right?
Well, a listing agreement and a buyer representation agreement are two-way agreements.
Yeah.
So the seller's saying, I'll do this if you do that. And the buyer's saying, I will do this if you do that.
Yeah.
It's a little bit give and take. And yeah, if you don't have an alignment of priorities and of personalities, it can be really difficult.
Absolutely.
I always say there is an agent for everybody.
There's a nut for every bolt. I think I stole that from an agent.
But it's so true because, and I do, one of the things they teach you in a lot of real estate training is find your niche and find your people. And you will never be a realtor for every single person out there. And that's okay. So find the people that you do align the most with. I don't meet with people ahead of time necessarily, but I do a buyer intake kind of questionnaire now.
So on the phone? Or
I send it to them just to fill out. And it's things like, is school district a consideration? Yeah, what are your jobs? Pre-approval? Do you have a deposit ready? Because the reality is deposits went from 10 years ago, $1,000 was a reasonable deposit. And now it's more common that 5, 10, 15, 25, 50, maybe even 100,000 if we're in those higher price properties is required. So do you have that? And if you don't have that, let's have that conversation now as to how we're going to get it. The other thing I started adding is, when is your availability to look at houses? Because, the reality is you can't only have clients that are available Friday evenings, for example, because you can't help 4 people that have the same 2 hours to look at houses every week. So that's been really helpful, I think, too. And you just, narrows down who is a good fit for you. And they have a chance too. I always make it sure that they know that's a great chance for them too. Do they have questions for me?
Yeah. Do you have, sorry, Neil, do you have like a number of clients that you'll work with, like a hard number, or does it depend on when their availability is?
I don't have a hard number of clients. Last year, I was super fortunate. I had a really busy year. And there was a time where if I didn't feel I had time for more buyers that only could look at things on the weekends, which typically becomes a problem, I would refer them to someone who had a little bit more time for them at that point. And
don't say me, because I was super busy too, Kelly.
No, I don't think it was you. No, or for sellers, for example, there was a couple times I said, you know what, can you hold off for 4 days? I'm going to get these 3 houses sold, and then I'm going to give you 100% of my attention come Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yeah.
So you do a better job for your clients when you're not working with 100 people at one time.
Yeah, for sure.
I find that one of my biggest things in building rapport with my clients, because it has to be, again, that principle of reciprocity, is I kind of preemptively tell them what may happen in a lot of situations. I give them a heads up that, hey, you know what, there's a good possibility in an aggressive market that you're going to lose the first one you go in for. Yeah. It's going to take you a bit to realize how, when it first started in 2017, I remember when we first started going crazy, you'd have to say that to first-time buyers. Just be like, look, you're going to walk into this one and you're probably going to get throttled because your amount and the amount that you're willing to go over, or the amount that your conditions you're not willing to remove, which I don't want you to remove necessarily. I have to endorse those conditions be in there for now. But that sort of things is what's going to cost you, quite honestly, this deal possibly. But you have to be ready for that. Or in a multiple offer situation, there may be a situation where it appears that this person has an advantage because they're working with this person, but it might not necessarily be the case. And just try and prepare them for situations so that they don't look at me as, oh my goodness, what's happening here? You knew this? You know what I mean? Whereas if they know that it's a possibility up front, then I think it becomes a little more palatable if it happens.
So you're preemptively identifying the pain points in the transaction.
Sometimes,
and then when they happen, it builds that trust in you.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, for sure it is.
Because I remember, and I thought I found it odd once, very early on. I think it was probably around 2007. I was talking to an agent who'd been doing it a heck of a lot longer than me, and the agent heard me talking to a client and heard me say that I wouldn't purchase the property. And the person said to me afterwards, I can't believe you actually said that to somebody. I would never tell a client not to buy something.
So sorry, so just to clarify, you said with your own words, I wouldn't buy property?
Yeah, I wouldn't buy that.
Wouldn't
property,
buy that. Okay.
That
Thank
specific
you. Sorry, I
property.
just want to make sure that was
Yeah.
clear.
So I said I
thought that's what-
personally would walk from this property.
Yep.
I don't think it's a good fit, and I have some issues with blah 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 blah. And this agent said to me, "I can't believe I heard you say that. I did it once, and it stung me." And they went and bought it through somebody else. And they said, never again have I ever. I let them make up their mind if they're going to buy it. When see, for me, I have a habit of that. Some of my clients that are my longest clients are people that I've actually listened, said, look, if you buy this property, I'm going to make money, and I'll make a decent amount of money, and I'm going to go home and I'll be fine. And in 2 years, you're going to call me and ask me to sell this property, and I'm going to have some issues with it because of this, this, and this. So if I'm more than happy to keep looking if you are.
Isn't that so funny that somebody would have told you, like, I can't believe you said that? I actually think I consider it to be a point of pride not talking somebody out of a house or buying a house, but like pointing out reasons that they might want to consider before making that decision.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I don't say that I'm talking them out of buying a house, but like,
you're just informing them.
that mindset is so different than the way I run my life.
I think
it's
I'm
like
almost,
unimaginable to me that you would just say nothing and let them buy it.
I'm literally almost the opposite, where I probably try to talk more clients out of buying something.
Absolutely.
I think that's a point of pride.
Into buying
It
something.
should be a point of pride.
Yeah.
Like, you are not favoring your own interests over your clients. That's basically what the basis of being a fiduciary is, to not value your own needs over their needs.
Absolutely.
That's everything.
And usually how I word it is things like, these are 3 really big red flags I have about this property. So if you wish to proceed, these are things we're going to have to find more about. And you might want to, consider some of these answers very strongly. Mm-hmm. And that's my, polite way of saying, don't touch that. Don't do it. Don't buy it. Don't
And
offer.
you're just like crying while you write the offer.
I have had people, not recently, but I have had people sign a disclosure before that said my professional advice was not to buy the property because of XYZ.
Right.
And so you can offer. That's fine. I will still help you offer. But I am going to tell you why you should not.
Right.
Why I do not think you should. And here's a disclosure that I told you why I don't think you should.
Nothing wrong with that.
I had somebody actually ask me to write a deal, and they'd pay me to write a deal privately. And I didn't think the property was, I didn't want to have my name or any advice tethered to the property for liability
So they were just offering
reasons.
you fee for service to write the document?
And I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. I don't really like that property. I don't really want to be
Because you think
tethered
if
to
that goes pear-shaped and you get dragged in front of a judge, they're not going to say, yeah, you didn't have a representation agreement with this buyer, but you're a professional.
Absolutely.
And you should have known better, and da-da-da-da-da,
Yeah.
and then you'd get dragged into it.
Yeah. It's assumed agency, really, right?
Yeah.
It's assumed
Even if
agency
they
in the
sign a
mind of the
thing that-
consumer. In the mind of the consumer, they can get you for that.
So speaking of realtor etiquette, I find it really interesting when realtors are selling their own homes and they try not to disclose certain things that they should be disclosing. I've had a couple scenarios where I was showing properties where the listing agent is a realtor. And then we figured a couple things out on our own, and we're like, hey, what about XYZ? And I can't remember right now exactly what they were, but they were things that probably should have been disclosed. And if, even if I understand if it's a gray area for a regular seller, but not for a listing agent, not for an actual realtor. You know what you should be disclosing. And I would argue that you have an onus to or the onus is on them even more to disclose, because again, if you get called to court because you did not disclose that, what you can't say, oh, I didn't know. You should know. You're a realtor.
It's
that
your
is
house.
quite literally your job. And I'll tell you, there's two realtors that I am very wary of because they tried to hide or deliberately did not disclose things in their own houses.
It's amazing that you actually brought up the realtor selling. Just as last night, Pam and I were talking, because we've been talking about a property, possibly buying it, but we need to sell our house. And I actually said, I don't even want to sell our house. I'm just going to get Ben and Kelly to sell it.
It is very stressful selling your own house. I've done it.
I've done it. I've taken a few courses from people who say you should never list your own house.
Yeah.
You should always hire another agent to do it. I have not heeded that advice. We've sold our own houses a couple times. And I may have gone a little too far with disclosures. Like I
think I would be that way,
so
too.
when we sold our last house, it had Kitech plumbing. And Kitech plumbing is an interesting issue because a lot of houses have Kitech and have had no issues. But it's well publicized that these houses
may have issues.
May eventually have issues. And you ask 3 plumbers and you get 3 different answers. The reality is there's a settled lawsuit in the United States on the product against the company that made the product. And that's kind of an established fact. So, but I remember we negotiated the deal, and I was so concerned about this Kitech coming back to bite me that I wrote it in the offer, and then they came back and they wanted a price reduction to actually remove it all. But then when the next person sold that same house, nothing on the listing at all. And I'm 100% sure they didn't take the Kitech out.
Was still there.
So we took the hit. I think it was $8,500 I took off the price of the house. Which was, I thought, a good deal because replumbing that house would have been $12,000-13,000 probably at the time.
If not more.
If not more. Because you got a lot of drywall work. You had California ceilings, and that's like, you can't just fix that. You have to kind of redo it. So anyway, I felt like we took a bath on it, but I went to sleep that night with a clear moral.
I would much rather be
conscience.
that way.
I went to, I had an agent approach me about selling one of my rental properties, and so they bought a buyer through one of my rental properties. It wasn't listed, but I had mentioned that we would sell it.
Was it the beauty?
Oh yeah,
I love
Ben's
that
favorite house. Justin and I bought a 4-plex that Ben had listed. It was our first rental property.
And it killed me because I wanted to buy it, but I didn't have the stomach.
No, it was a lot of work. It was a lot of money. It was a lot of headache. My very first trip to the landlord-tenant bureau was at that house.
Naturally.
That's actually this whole entire house is a great story we could do a whole podcast on it. But for this particular story, an agent brought his buyer through, and I'm going through and pointing out every single thing that is wrong. And the agent goes, Kelly, shut up. Like, they can see. And I
said, the
said,
buyer's agent told you to shut up?
yeah. And the buyer's like, no, I really actually appreciate this. And I said, here's the thing. I don't care whether you think this needs to be disclosed or not. I am telling them.
Yeah, it's your butt.
Every single thing that I believe to be wrong with this property. I'm also telling them they should have a home inspection. I'm also telling them they need to do a fire certification. So when you sell investment properties, they need to have an ESA certification, and oftentimes they need an up-to-date fire inspection. And I suggested all these things, and they're like, oh, it'll be fine. Well, right before closing, sure enough, the lender comes through and says, where's the fire, where's the fire safety, where's the ESA? So we had to have all those things done last minute that I thought we should have done ahead of time. But my point was, I slept way better at night knowing that I had told them every single tiny thing that could be wrong with that property, with the tenants, with everything. And honestly, the buyer really appreciated it. I think they bought the property because they were confident I had disclosed everything.
Yeah.
I was not hiding a single thing in that place.
Nothing wrong with going into that type of situation with your eyes wide open.
Well, no, and that was the thing that baffled me in the really hot markets too, though, because I had a couple of clients who would sell investment properties or something like that. And be like, oh, should we tell about the leaky drywall? And I'm like, absolutely. Tell about everything that is wrong with this property right now, because you're still going to get absolutely top dollar.
Yeah.
So why would you even think about not telling the truth? There's no reason to.
Yeah, I think my line during that busy period with sellers was like, you know what, we'll just disclose everything that's wrong because that's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
It's the right thing to do. And if a buyer walks away, we'll just pick from one of the other 10 that want it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. If you lose $2,000 and you're making 80,000 more than this place is worth, then don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And you don't get sued.
And you don't get sued.
Yeah.
There's no lawsuit.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, I've always said it's better to have a buyer walk away right now and we'll find another one than it is to get a phone call in a year and a half and you're being sued.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Okay. One thing that drove me bananas when that stuff was going on, 2017, and even recently, it seemed to take realtors, when they're advising their clients, a long time to figure out that cash offers aren't always the best offers necessarily. You know what I mean?
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, we might
because
disagree.
I remember writing a conditional offer. It was like 5 days. We had like a pre-approval letter that we gave to the seller, and it was like 5 days because those buyers were not at the point yet where they were willing to just take the risk.
Yeah.
They needed to do the appraisal on the house to make sure that the money would come through.
Yeah.
It was around $600,000. The house at the time, this was several years, I'm going to say 4 or 5 years ago, and there was another offer in play that was cash, and they took that other offer. And I think the difference in price was like $5-6 grand. Like we were going to pay a little bit more. I think we had it like, because when I saw the price come up, I'm like, oh, well, we were a little bit more money, but to wait 5 or 6 days to make $6,000, like most people can't make $6,000 in 5 days.
So I have a different perspective than both of you.
But, hold on that thought.
Yep.
The listing agent double-ended that deal.
Okay, so that does change my opinion a tiny bit, other than I would just let people know these are your choices. You have, say you have $595 on the table right now.
Are you talking to the seller?
Sorry, if I'm the listing agent.
So you're talking to the seller.
I'm talking to the seller.
Okay.
And we have $595 cash, no conditions, or we have say $601 conditional for 5 days. These are the scenarios you're going to run into. It's possible that the condition of finance is not going to go through, and now you don't have $595 either. But if you only have $590, you also might have $610 if you turn around and do it again. So I found that a lot of people in that scenario, my sellers went with the cash because they didn't want uncertainty for a week. They were tired of having people come through, but...
You mean 80 showings in 3 days is hard on
Right.
sellers?
But so in my situation where some of it was because the agents hadn't dealt with it enough, and they'd always heard that phrase, cash is king. Okay, one of the very first... see, and I don't think it is always. Okay,
Yeah.
well, just because I can tell you, I remember seeing an agent that I legitimately would have known better. It was a vacant house in 2017. We had 2 months of consistently going up, and it was still going up.
Yeah.
And this was a little bungalow that would have sold for 6 months prior. It might have sold for $159, and it was a lady who was going into a home, so it was just pretty much an estate thing, and her daughters would get the money or whatever. My clients go through same sort of situation. They had the pre-approval, they had everything, but they just wanted to have, I don't remember what it was. They needed 5 days for financing too, or something like that. But this was a case where, as I said, 6 months earlier, this was a $159 house. This house sold for $199, but my clients had offered $217.
Oh.
So it was $17,000 for 5 days. And for a little old lady who had lived in that house for 20 years to get it from $40,000 to $159,000 in equity, 5 days would have got her $17,000
Right.
more.
Yeah.
But the hassle of just, that it still went up for another 5 months past that. And we all knew that it wasn't just going to stop. And that in June in March of 2017. But I mean, no, this was in the 2017.
Yeah.
So I know you want to, I have a question, but I lost it. So why don't you go ahead? Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, so I do understand why, as a buyer's agent, and you lose because of conditions, you're frustrated. But most sellers, when I explain the possible outcomes of each option, still choose to take the cash, even when I think that that's the crazy option.
Oh, yeah, it depends on the person. I'm just
But
saying.
I also, for the cash offer, I still try to request where possible, as the listing agent, that the buyer's agent can tell us, show us their pre-approval, show us their proof of funds, whatever it is to make them confident in their cash offer.
Yeah.
Because as we all know, many people do cash offers that should not do cash offers.
So this was my question. Over the past 28 months, things went really crazy in our market. As listing agents, did you have any deals where you accepted the cash offer and it was either delayed or couldn't close?
I had one that was delayed, and the sellers, I had some apprehensions about that offer, actually. It was the best offer. I trusted the second highest offer more. That agent was able to provide me a lot more information about her clients and their ability to close. But the first offer was like $35,000 more than the second offer.
Hard to turn that down.
And so my sellers did go with that offer. And we had some assurances from the buyer's agent that everything was in place. Probably about 2 weeks before close, we started getting notification they were looking for extensions. 3 days before it's supposed to close, an appraisal is being ordered, which for the listener, an appraisal should be ordered like a month before close, not 3 days before close. So an appraisal 3 days before close typically says it's not going to close on time.
That's an indication of an issue.
So the original sale price, I'm going to say, was around $675, $750, somewhere in that ballpark. We had a $35,000 initial deposit, and because of that, the buyers had a little bit more need to close, so they're not, losing that. So we agreed to extend for a week or two with another $15,000 deposit. Then we had to extend again for a week or two. We asked for the same thing. I think we got another $10,000 or $20,000 deposit. So at one point we have a $75,000 or so we're sitting on of the buyer's money as we keep extending. They did eventually close. It was very stressful for everybody involved. The only thing that saved us in that situation was a high deposit from the start. And I do tell that story to most of my sellers.
It's a good one.
Moving forward, part of the reason as a listing agent, it's not my decision to make, but one of the things I will very strongly advocate for is the highest possible deposit from those buyers
I like
in any
deposits.
market. I mean, I don't see $100,000 deposits a lot, but I don't want to see $1,000. I don't even want to see $5,000, to be honest. And while I understand, especially for first-time buyers, that's a lot of money to put on the table.
So you don't think that your buyers, though, but in this whole scenario that you explained, your buyers, if there was a $35,000 difference, would take the cash in an extending market where there's no. We knew
my sellers took the money.
They took the higher amount?
Well, my sellers just took the highest offer. Actually, I think they all were cash. They took the highest offer.
Okay.
Yeah, but it almost went sideways.
No, but I mean, have you ever got stung by a client taking a conditional over a cash where the conditional was that much higher?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, actually twice that I
was
can
it
think
near
of.
the end of the run?
One I'm going to say was around 2018, 2019. And then one was 2020, I believe. And both situations, the conditional offer did not waive their conditions. And the second offers we ended up getting in place were less than the first and second offers on the table.
So
originally.
I guess the option for the seller in that point is to pick your poison. Because do you want to be 3 months past accepted offer before you find out that things are going pear-shaped and you may not close at all? Or do you want to wait 5 or 6 days from the first offer to have a little bit of upset and get another offer in play?
But if you're going to take a conditional offer, you're not going to take a conditional offer that has conditions for. I'm not talking about conditions for 30 days and with a 90-day close. I'm talking. I think I would recommend that somebody expedite that considerably, right?
Yeah.
A couple times my sellers declined to take conditional offers that were higher because they didn't have the time. So they needed quick closes for relocation or for financing or for whatever they needed a quick close for. And it was purely a time thing where they didn't have any more time to wait for conditions.
So I only had one that didn't close. It closed, but it was like similar to yours on a smaller scale. I think the price was around $400, and it was extended once, extended twice. And the story we got from the buyer was that, I don't even remember, but they really made us feel like it was a family that was going to be moving in, and they kind of like played with our emotions a little bit to get us to extend this deal. And then they eventually did close, thankfully. And then 18 months later, the house was back on the market, renovated. So maybe not even that long. So I think maybe they lied about it being a family and they were actually going to flip the house, which is frustrating, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter.
Right.
I kind of went, when I saw that come back
and
up.
and it's all, obviously it's just, there's extenuating circumstances.
Yeah.
There's obviously situations where I would tell clients to take a cash if they were, but in commercial as well, you don't see cash offers.
Right.
Like,
No.
Yeah, that's different.
It's all going to be due diligence and
Yeah,
stuff. But
yeah,
I will
yeah.
say once with the residential, I had one where there was an offer that was conditional, that was a heartstring one, and we went with it, and it turned out, and it was a family that was moving here and had adopted a child from like Michigan or something, and the paperwork hadn't come up, and they actually offered considerably more for us to take the conditional along with the heartfelt story, saying we're waiting for the clearance papers
Right.
and whatever to bring the child here.
That's nice.
So we obviously
Yeah.
facilitated that, and it worked out well. But yeah, I can see the
I know when we've got a conditional offer on the table versus a cash offer, and I'm representing the seller, I always try and explain the safety net that the condition is.
Absolutely.
Like that we don't know. Like this was the cool thing about working in Woodstock like 10 years ago. I knew every agent that I was working with.
Yeah.
Like with the exception of the odd one that might come in from Kitchener, Waterloo, or maybe from London, I knew them personally. And like you kind of get to know people's track records and whatnot.
Yep.
And there's certain agents that you just know they've done their homework and certain that you're not sure. Okay.
Yep.
But all of a sudden in 2019, 20, 21, 22, I would say like it flipped. And then you're seeing like 80, 90% of the agents you're dealing with, you're not familiar with.
Yeah.
So you're trying to instill it upon them that if you're going to bring me a cash offer when we're competing against 8 or 9 other offers, I would like to know a little bit about your clients. Whatever
Yeah.
they'll let you know, they'll let you tell us. Give us a bit of a story. Give us a bit of information about their financial well-being. Like, are they going to give us some proof that they can close this transaction?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And in the absence of that, I would probably push my clients to take an offer with a short financial conditional period, because then you know that from the time it's accepted until they remove the condition,
Yeah.
they are actively doing their due diligence to make sure that in 60 days you're getting your $800,000 and you're not left holding 2 houses
Yeah.
and or unable to close your next house, which is then a chain of lawsuits. Like it's
especially if your agent knows to fill out a notice of fulfillment and not a waiver, then you know for sure that it's
Oh,
gonna
Neil,
go.
Yes.
explain the difference to us between a notice of fulfillment and a waiver.
Well, a notice of fulfillment means that the condition has actually been fulfilled.
They
A
didn't just
waiver-
say it doesn't matter.
They're not just pushing it aside and saying, "Yeah, we've done it, kind of."
we
but we're not gonna
wanted
give you
that, but now we don't want it.
documentation."
Yeah.
I have actually one more follow-up to that story that I told that I should have added. In the time that we sold that house, in all of those delays, the market was rapidly declining, and the value of that home had declined by at least $100,000.
Yeah.
So that's a big
Yes.
change. That's
So
That's a problem.
If we had to resell that home, we were taking a huge cut on price. And my clients had already relocated to another province.
Right.
So yeah, there was a couple extra things that play
So
in that.
I know you're not a lawyer, Kelly, but if you did sell the house once and those people failed to close and then
Yeah.
you had to relist it and sell again, what is your real estate sales representative
Yep. My advice?
opinion on what could happen in
My
that
opinion on
scenario?
what could happen, with the full disclosure that I am not a lawyer and would recommend that my clients in that situation consult a lawyer or 3, would be that it's very likely that the original buyers on that property will be sued for the difference in sale price and will be successful, as there are multiple cases in Ontario real estate law over the last 10 years where the sellers successfully sued the buyers for the difference in
And
sale price.
That is likely to continue happening right now, as houses are worth
Absolutely.
$250,000 less than they were 14
We're
months
seeing
ago.
them here that
Yep.
haven't closed, right?
Oh, is that right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I remember when it first started.
I think our office has stayed pretty clean.
We have,
And I think
yeah.
part of that is because we are good agents and we do our homework, but also it's a little bit of luck.
It also can happen. That's the thing. It can happen to the absolute best
Absolutely
realtors. It can
it
happen
can.
to anybody.
Yeah, for sure.
But do you remember we were having a conversation in February, right before the taps turned off, right before it went, okay, the money's not flowing anymore. And
Oh, you can still have it. It just costs you 6 times as much.
right, and there was those 2 houses in Woodstock, and I'm not even going to name the streets, but one was on a much was not on an arterial road, like it wasn't a throughway. It was
So
bigger.
one was on a better street, you're
One was
saying?
on a better street.
Okay.
It was a bigger property.
So house A is on a good street.
Yeah, and it was like 2,300 square feet on
Okay.
the, and
Yep.
this other house was not on a good street, and it sold for the exact same amount as this other property, but instead of being 2,300 square feet, it was only 1,600 square feet. And like basically, if you looked at the two, nobody would ever say, I want to live on this street more than this street.
Yep.
And lot size and house size and condition were all things that would be weighed on here. And when you looked at the cost per square footage, the one that was less appealing was like $300 more per square foot. And you're like, okay, the sky's about to fall.
Yeah.
I remember this.
That was
Yeah.
like peak crazy.
Yeah.
I remember, and then I believe House B failed to close.
It did.
Oh,
You're 100% right.
I
Yes,
know
it did.
exactly what Neil is talking about. House
Yeah.
B failed to close and eventually resold for, I'm going to say, $150,000 or $200,000
Yes.
less.
So where it should have been,
Yes.
likely, and probably the victim of a last-minute appraisal, I would imagine.
Oh,
if I had to
100%.
guess. The bank probably looked at the things, the paperwork, and went like, what?
Yeah, you
So-
remember that conversation.
So actually,
right?
let's talk about, we should probably wrap this episode up
We
before too long.
should.
This has been a lot of real estate, guys. Good job.
Wow, good for us.
But so one of the questions I often get from buyers is like, well, we're pre-approved. Why do we need a condition of financing? And should I explain how I
Yep.
explain to them and see if you guys had a different way of doing that? Well,
Okay.
I always say that when you go into the bank, they're looking at you. They're looking at your debt. They're looking at your income. They're looking at your ability to afford the mortgage and other things that come with home ownership.
Yep.
But then what they do, so then you're approved. So they
Yep.
like you. But then what they do is they're going to make sure that the house that you buy is also
Yep.
worth the amount of money they're going to lend on it.
Yep.
Because they're not going to want to lend you $800,000 for a house that only looks like it's worth $650.
Yep.
So we want to make sure, by way of a short condition, that they get the chance to do their due diligence and make sure that the money is
Yeah.
that the house is worth the money they're about to
Yeah.
lend you on it. Do you guys
It's-
explain
I-
any
I-
differently
I
than that?
actually
Fairly
think that's
similar
better
way.
than the way I
Yeah.
explained it. So I think I'm going to adopt that.
Same. I'm just going to use Ben's explanation
enough.
from now. That's really good. I will
That's
say.
how I do it. I don't know if other people say.
No,
I
explain
do
it differently.
think part of the issue we had in Oxford County, probably starting around 2018, is when we had an influx of agents working in our area that were not from our area. They misjudged the prices. And so as a person who was a listing agent in multiple offer situations, I noticed that sometimes the prices went up more than they probably had to because the agent didn't realize the house A versus house B, for example.
It was strange that, because I will say this, there were, prior to 2017 and stuff like that, that was the first real, oh my goodness, multiple offers are a thing. We saw them beforehand, but it
very
was
rarely.
very rarely. And the funny thing is that realtors are so predictable back in the day.
Still
you knew
are.
exactly how they would do it based on who it was. I could name 10 agents that right now would always go $100 over asking. If
Hey, man, that's my trick.
And they'd be 100 over asking, and I'd be like, okay, so we're just gonna go 1,000.
Do you know what I call
we're
that?
Gonna win.
I call that the buy 'em dinner. So why would you go at 500 even when you can go $500,100 and just buy 'em dinner? That's what I
nice.
always call it, the buy 'em dinner.
So I always knew that though, and I found though all of a sudden though with this last streak of bidding wars that we had, it was like once 2017 came and we started getting the Kitchener-Waterloo people, it went up one level. But when GTA agents started bringing their money here, it was like the gloves came off and people were throwing down money like the agents were shopping with their clients' money like I've never seen.
Well,
right? They
I
were
do
like,
think-
go 200 over.
I do think part of that is it's a little more normal in that market to act that way.
Yeah.
Okay. And B, think about what they sold. Like these folks might be selling a Brampton semi for $1.2 million.
Yeah.
And then they're coming here and getting fully detached homes that, probably should have been $700 for $950. And what's an extra $50,000 at that point when you've cashed out massively on your last property?
I understand that, but as a realtor, I have a hard time being so cavalier with something that's not my own. I can say,
absolutely.
oh,
On
you
behalf
need to
of your
do
buyers,
this.
you mean?
Yes,
but
I
as
can
a
say,
selling like a listing agent,
Oh,
you're
yeah.
kind of like, hey, bring it on.
Oh,
Like we just
I
want
actually
the
found
most,
that
right?
odd when people get very exclusionary. Listing agents are like, we don't like out of town people coming to our area, like realtors. They'll be like, we don't want out of town realtors because I love out of town realtors. If I have a problem property and it's overpriced, I want out of town realtors because if they haven't done their homework, they are going to walk their clients probably into maybe not the best deal. And that's not my responsibility. I'm working for
the seller.
I'm working for the seller, and I've done my due diligence. And if my client decides to price at this price and somebody comes from another market and is less informed and decides that's the best way to go and I'm not representing them, then I guess that's not on me.
You'll
I
happily
agree
eat
with
crow
you.
and get the wrong asking price if someone comes in and saves your behind. Right?
Absolutely.
I agree with you. I just think it's unfortunate for the industry as realtors in general started working outside of their boundaries. I think it really did impact sale prices. And I think we did the whole industry a disservice as a whole.
But there needs to be bad realtors, or else there would be some houses that just never sold. It's true. I have a map at home that I can put all the houses and all the streets. There's some streets I've never sold property on. Okay, and that's just my opinion. I'm never going to show
But there's
you
no
the
such
map.
thing as a bad house. It's just there's the right price for every house. There's the right
Oh,
house for
absolutely.
everybody.
But I mean, there are some houses that I'd probably be like, yeah, that's a shit box. I wouldn't buy it. No, you know what I mean? But I mean, it's just, I don't know. That's me.
All right, we should wrap this one up.
Painful honesty is what you get from this group.
I think the moral of the story here is you should use a local agent who actually is informed about the area that they are trading in when you're buying or selling.
Yeah,
That's it. They'll do a better job for you.
Yeah.
And there's lots of room for everybody to operate in the market that they're in.
But to be clear, we're not licensed. We have a registration to operate anywhere in the province, and some
Absolutely.
people take that quite literally and will work wherever they need to go. And other people are a little bit more picky. Agents are a little bit more picky. That they only seem to they're only able to service their clients properly in a certain geographical area. I respect that.
That's me.
That's me.
Yeah.
I
Do
rarely
you think
operate
that
outside
we
of Oxford
should
County.
now we're dealing with the fallout of a lot of heavy bidding on properties in Woodstock. Now it's adjusting and whatnot. Is there any responsibility on the part of the agents for blowing up those prices, or is it just sort of it's free,
That's what I was
free
suggesting
market?
before, is that I genuinely believe the influx of out-of-town agents artificially raised our prices more than they would have otherwise been raised.
No, and there's some validity to it. But at the same token, it's... the momentum had already shifted.
Yeah.
Oh, for
And
sure.
GTA was
Yeah.
like a big bang that happened.
And
it just exploded in all
here's the thing. At the
directions.
end of the day, those agents and their buyers were offering what they wanted to offer on those properties. So even if I believe them to have been inflated, they were offering what they felt they needed to offer to get that property.
And they always said in real estate
they had
school-
to find somewhere to live in a certain period of time, and we're like, I got to buy this. I don't care about an extra 50.
And they always said in real estate school, true market value is never determined until it sells. And
true.
regardless of what you think of what it sold for, it sold.
Fair market value is what someone is willing to pay for the property.
On an open market,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
All right, that was
absolutely.
great. Nice,
good job,
nice
guys.
chatting about
All right,
real estate.
we'll shut
Well
it down.
done.
All right, bye.
Bye.